Now, this is going to be a great opportunity for everyone who knows that the merge is coming, but don't really understand what's happening with it. So Skylar Weaver from Ethereum Foundation is going to explain you everything about it. Skylar, welcome to the stage. You're very lucky to have Skylar here because actually he's been on the road with his motorcycle for the last 3 years, and he's on the road, on the way to Argentina right now, so he had to flew out of Peru, and right after he finished this talk, he's going to fly back to Peru, or maybe you hang out for a little bit.
Yeah, hang out till Friday.
Okay, enjoy everyone.
Cool, awesome. Thank you, Anya. Thank you, Anya. So today we're going to talk a little bit about proof of stake and the merge. Before we jump into it, I want to say thank you to the organizers, Manu, and the whole team for ETH Barcelona here. I know how difficult it is to put on a conference of this size and quality. Huge applause for all of them. I actually work with the Ethereum Foundation, primarily on the DevCon team, and I felt it would be remiss if I didn't invite you all to come join us in Bogota, in Colombia, for DevCon, the annual Ethereum Developers Conference that the Ethereum Foundation puts on. So this is the first one in 3 years. We've had to postpone it for 2 because of the pandemic. So we're super excited to have it finally, and welcome you all to join us there. If you scan that QR code, it brings you to the Twitter where you can follow and keep on updates. And for those who speak Spanish here in Spain, maybe there's some parallels there as well, as it's in Colombia. We'll have some talks and some events before DevCon in all Spanish as well. So hope to see many of you there. But today, we're not talking about DevCon, we're talking about proof of stake and the merge. And so I was initially going to do something a little bit more technical about the merge, about what it is. But I figured it would actually be nice if we took a step back and went back to the basics a little bit. I think there's a lot of new people in the community, and a lot of people who know that the merge is coming, know that proof of stake is good. But if you were to ask them whether, why is it better than proof of work, or why is the Ethereum community moving to proof of stake, I think some people, or many people, wouldn't necessarily be able to articulate that. And so for those of you who are very familiar with proof of stake already, maybe this is some repeat information, but I'm hoping that this is a good reminder before we reach the merge of why we're actually doing it. And so I'm going to go into why proof of stake, and going to talk about a bunch of stuff that's been debated for years, almost a decade now, and try to cover it in 20 minutes. So bear with me as I go pretty fast. And if you find me afterwards, you can ask me questions. But first, I'll start with, is proof of stake better than proof of work in every way? Because I've heard some people say this, and I think it's important to recognize that there's trade-offs in life. There's trade-offs in everything, including the difference between, or switching between, proof of work and proof of stake. So I think it'd be fair if I covered the possible advantages of proof of work. These are a few of the commonly cited ones. And there's a few others if you dive into the intricacies. But to start off, I'll say that the proof of stake, one advantage of proof of work is that proof of stake requires weak subjectivity. Proof of work does not. And so essentially what this means at a basic level is that if your staking node is offline for a certain period of time, right now it's months, and you want to come back online, you'll need to find some trusted party, whether that be a friend or a peer or an institution like Etherscan or Infura, to get the current state of the chain to fully sync the right state of the proof of stake chain. And I think it's best actually explained articulated by Vitalik in this article here about how I learned to love weak subjectivity. Also a good recommendation is the Bankless podcast between Lynn Alden and Justin Drake on proof of work versus proof of stake. There's some other advantages of proof of work as well. One is physical hardware-driven nature of proof of work adds friction even to well-capitalized attackers. So if you're going to attack proof of work, you're going to need to buy billions of dollars of hardware, and that's probably going to be noticeable, probably going to be recognizable somewhere. People will notice that somebody's buying up billions of dollars of hardware, and so it probably goes less undetectable. In my opinion, noticeable and stoppable are two different things. So whether you notice it, maybe you can. Whether you're able to stop a state actor from doing this is maybe another question. But that is, I think, one advantage of proof of work. And another one I would say is a proof of stake system from the start could be bad for distribution of the asset. So with proof of work, it forces miners to sell part of the reward for energy and hardware costs. That's less ideal system is one that starts with an ICO, where you distribute these tokens to the highest bidders, then a POS system from the start, where then those bidders who won those tokens, earn those tokens, are the ones in control of the validator set, and new coins, new issuance, goes to the incumbents, with no need really to sell or distribute those back out, because there's not as many costs with running a node on proof of stake. I'd say the benefit here is that Ethereum has had 7 years of proof of work to better the distribution of Ether after the ICO. And I think there's lots of reports out there right now that illustrate that the distribution is actually much better than a lot of other chains that exist. And so I think it's actually an advantage that we've had proof of work to start. But those are some benefits of proof of work. Then why are we moving to proof of stake? And so I'll run through here, like there's 6 or 7 that I'll run through of primary reasons why I think it's important that we're moving to proof of stake. The first one being higher security. So proof of stake offers more security for the same cost. The security of a blockchain can be calculated in the amount of money it takes to attack the chain. How much does it cost to get 51% control of the miners or of the stakers? Proof of stake security offers roughly 5 to 20x more security for the same cost. Meaning the attacker would need 5 to 20x more capital for performing a 51% attack on Ethereum proof of stake than Ethereum proof of work. If you want to see the math behind this, I'd recommend this article, Why Proof of Stake, by Vitalik from 2020. Very similar and in line with this last one is more economic efficiency that proof of stake brings. So what does that mean? When we talked in the last slide about proof of stake offers roughly 5 to 20x more security for the same cost, what is the cost that we're talking about? The cost is what we need to pay to incentivize validators. And so we pay this incentivization in Ether emissions, in the block reward, so in inflation, if you will. Those block rewards goes to the validators, and then we have more validators securing the network. So with proof of stake, we can lower emissions to achieve the same or higher security than we have had with proof of work. So when we lower emissions, we can more easily reach a point where more Ether is being burnt than is being created, which maybe in turn results in a deflationary Ether supply, which is where the ultrasound money meme has come from. And a higher price of Ether could possibly result from that, which would mean a higher price to attack the chain, and in turn more security. It's also kind of easily visualized here on this ultrasound.money website. You can see the burn on the left, issuance on the right, and supply growth in the middle. Issuance is 5.5 million per ETH per year before the merge, and if we simulate the merge, you can see that issuance drops by 10x to 0.6 million ETH per year, and we actually end up, based on this like past historical data, of negative emission of 1.8% per year, which you can see more at this ultrasound money site. OK, another pro of proof of stake is better attack recovery. So I think there's a myth among those who are pro proof of work out there that argue that 51% attacks are infeasible for chains with high security. Those being like Ethereum, those being Bitcoin right now. A lot of pro proof of work opponents would say it's infeasible. Nobody's going to attack that. And I think that's a fantasy. Like I think currently, so we look at currently it costs roughly between 10 to 20 billion to 51% attack Bitcoin and Ethereum. And for you and I, yeah, 10 to 20 billion, that's a lot of money. That's a lot of money. But for state actors, it really isn't. In 2016, China defense budget was 146 billion for 1 year. In 2021, the US defense budget was 745 billion for 1 year. In my opinion, we will see 51% attacks in our lifetime, and it's super important that we're able to recover from them. In proof of stake, attacks are much easier to recover from than in proof of work. In proof of work, and why is that? It's because in proof of work, capital is outside the system. So if somebody attacks, you can't tell which miners are attacking, and you can't stop it. You can only fight it with building up your own hash power as well, or perhaps trying to locate them physically and then get involved in like a physical fight. In proof of stake, capital is within the system, the Ether. So you're able to, if someone attacks, you're able to see the attacking capital, and it can be force exited or deleted by community intervention. Now a 51% attack is not ideal, and I think it will be rare even if it does happen, but it's super important that if it does happen, in the case when it does, that the chain, the ecosystem is able to recover from it. And in proof of work, it's not possible. In proof of stake, it is. And so I think, like, in the way Justin Drake says this, is that this is like an infinite advantage of proof of stake over proof of work, where the other option is basically that the chain is stuck and everyone's screwed. And so this is one big advantage of proof of stake: better attack recovery. Another one, I would say, is more decentralization. So how do you become your own independent miner in proof of work? Well, you can invest millions of dollars in creating your own mining farm. You can invest, and when you do that also, you're probably finding a location that has like cooler climates, cheaper energy. Maybe you find green energy, but you're spending a lot of money to create your own mining farm to be an independent, profitable miner. You can invest less, but you'll be joining a pool and in turn contributing to the centralization of the network. Or you can run independently and invest less, but you'll be unprofitable, and it just doesn't really work out. So how do you become a validator in proof of stake? Well, you need no special hardware. You can use the computer you have with you in your backpack. You can stake on a Raspberry Pi for $300. You do need 32 ETH, and you could buy that from friends or from exchanges, and that costs right now around like $35,000. And yes, for some, that is a lot. But compared to the millions needed for being your own independent proof-of-work mining farm, I really think it's reasonable and much more accessible. And if you have less than this, you can join decentralized staking pools like Rocket Pool, et cetera, which aren't really possible in proof-of-work settings. And so, like, because becoming a validator is more accessible to more people, I would argue that there's much more decentralization in a proof-of-stake system than in a proof-of-work system. Second to last, I'll talk about censorship resistance. And so, like, if a government wants to locate a large proof-of-work mining farm, it's really easy. You just go ask the electric company, or you use a heat map technology like they do for weed farming in the US or other places, and you're able to pretty easily identify large mining farms, which end up having a large percentage of the overall hash rate. How do you do it how do you locate large proof-of-stake validators? It's not so easy. Because the lower electricity usage by validators makes it much harder to locate for those who are trying to search for it, trying to censor. And even if they do find the validating machine, destroying that machine doesn't destroy your ether. If you've backed up your keys somewhere else, you can go start your machine up again and continue staking or withdraw. And so this is not also just in theory, this is in practice. Like, maybe some of you saw last year, the Malaysian government found a large Bitcoin miner with 1,000-some Bitcoin mining rigs, and they crushed them using a steamroller. And so I think like this is one example, one instance of where proof-of-stake systems are much more censorship resistant than those using a proof-of-work system. Lastly, I will say that proof-of-stake is more solarpunk, more environmentally efficient. So some would argue that proof-of-work incentivizes green energy. In my opinion, that's a fantasy. Proof-of-work incentivizes cheap energy. And in some cases, yes, green energy is the cheapest energy around. But in most cases, the cheapest energy is not green, and you end up incentivizing cheap non-green energy. And so proof of stake, why is proof of stake more energy efficient? Well, proof of work is just proof of stake with extra steps, in my opinion. Instead of locking up the capital and proving that you own this capital, you have to use this capital to burn energy in solving pointless puzzles. And then you prove that you burnt this energy using this capital to validate the chain. And so in proof of stake, you can have an Ethereum validator that can run on under 10 watts today. And if we really do want a solarpunk future, in my opinion, we can't be wasting more energy than Switzerland does per year on solving pointless puzzles, which is why personally I'm very excited that with proof of stake, Ethereum is expected to reduce its energy emissions by 99.95%. So that's one of the biggest reasons I'm most excited for the merge, among others as well. So some of you might be asking, what's the status of the merge? I won't announce a date. I don't know a date. But I do know that we're making a lot of progress. And so over the past few years, it's gone through a lot of progress with creating clients. So we have 5 clients right now, consensus layer clients. We have a live beacon chain that's been running for over a year and a half, successfully, being audited, being tested, having like bug fixes and whatnot. We have created multiple dev nets and test nets to test the process of the merge. And most recently, we've actually started to merge, process the merge, do the merge on various actual real test nets. And so test nets where actually there's real activity. And so we just did Robston a couple weeks ago, and it went successfully, which was super exciting. So we merged Robston. So Robston is now running on proof of stake. Today, actually like an hour ago, or maybe even 20 minutes ago, we had scheduled the Sepolia testnet merge, and it went successfully last I checked. I have to check after the talk again, but that is super exciting as well, and I think a really good signal. And next, we will merge Goerli, which is another testnet that we have in the Ethereum ecosystem, and then after that comes mainnet. So we're super excited to finally be getting this close to it. There's a nice site there, When Merge. It walks you through what the steps are that we've taken to get here, basically, and estimates a rough timeline for mainnet. And so that's a little bit about the status of the merge. But in summary, I guess, in my opinion, if we truly want to move towards a solarpunk future, which I love this theme of the conference, I love the regen focus, I believe that proof of work is not the way, and this is one of the main reasons why we're switching to proof of stake and excited to finally get there later this year. That's all I have. I would say keep learning. There's a lot to keep up with. Hope to see a lot of you at future ETH events, whether that be DevCon or ETH Berlin or ETH Latam in Buenos Aires or whatever it may be. And if you want the slides are there. If you want a mega merge resource list to learn more about the merge and proof of stake and a lot of things I covered here, there's a nice good list over there. And if you have questions, I have 3 minutes, I guess, for questions if there are any. Thank you.
Well, hello. Yeah, you mentioned rough estimate around mainnet. What kind of date do you have in mind?
What kind of date? So I should say I work in the DevCon team. I'm not in the research team. I keep in touch with them. But I mean, I think I would love to see it happen before DevCon. And I think there's a lot of other people who are also on board with it or trying to make it happen before DevCon. So if that gives you any sort of indication, honestly, there's no hard date. There's not an announced date or anything like that. But I know we're trying to make it happen before DevCon. It'd be cool, because then we could celebrate.
How exactly does the proof of work result in a better distribution of capital? And
Yeah.
what time delay would you deem ideal for a merge? Like if it's not the 7 years or 8 years, right?
Yeah, fair question. So there's an argument, proof of work, right? When you have proof of work, you have miners. And these miners are rewarded with block rewards, and they spend a portion of that block reward covering the cost of their mining. So covering the cost of their electricity and their hardware, which is depreciating over time. And so when they receive this block reward, they're sort of forced to sell it, at least a portion of it. They're not selling all of it, they're selling a portion of it. And I think this is actually an important point because there's an argument out there that like proof of stake is a situation in which rich get richer. But I would argue actually like in both proof of stake and proof of work, they are rich get richer systems. Like you have a return on investment. If you invest $1,000 in becoming a miner or a validator, you will get a fixed return on that investment. And if someone else invests $1 million in that, they're going to get a fixed return, but that will be more money. So rich are getting richer. However, in proof of work, the rich are getting richer faster, meaning there are economies of scale in proof of work. Because of all these extra steps you can do, basically, here's one instance. Like if I'm going to run a mining farm, proof of work mining farm, and I'm going to invest like a few $1 million into it, I'm going to locate a place that has cool temperatures, cheap electricity, and maybe work out a deal with the local electricity plant or something. That's not the same deal that I would get if I invest just a few $1,000s in becoming a miner. In staking, you have both. If you invest either $10,000 or $10 million, you have the same opportunity. There's not really increasing return of investment on becoming a staker, and so the rich get richer, but at the same rate that the poor get richer, unlike with proof of work, where the rich get richer faster, if that makes sense. I am now out of time, so I don't know how. I think I'm probably done. But if you guys have more questions, you can DM me on Twitter. I'm around here for the week until Friday, and then I fly back to Peru to get on my motorcycle. But happy to answer questions out there. Thanks all.